All right, welcome to today's Tinkerbell contributor meeting. Posting in the chat our agenda notes if you don't have them already. We have a code of conduct. Please check the agenda notes for the code of conduct there if you haven't. And welcome. Feel free to put your name on the attendees. I don't see anybody new, but if anybody wants to reintroduce themselves, I guess, feel free. If you do have topics or show and tell or discussion items, please do put them in the agenda, or you can bring them up as we go. All right, getting into it, show and tell. I've got an item, the Boots iPixie repo. So as part of proposal 22, if you look in the proposals, we talked about breaking out a lot of the functionality. There is now an official Tinkerbell org repo called boots-iPixie. It is got a lot of code in there. Feel free to peruse it, I guess. I'll post a link in the chat too. Copy the link here. The highlights real quick I wanted to share was it pulls out now all of our custom iPixie builds, and it does all of the serving via TFTP and HTTP for those custom iPixie builds. It makes some nice isolation, I think, and I've been playing around with the PR to migrate the Boots proper repo to use this, and it removes quite a bit of code, and I think it is lining up nicely with some of the goals of that proposal. So highly recommend go check it out if you're interested. Play with it, break it, open issues. So that's my show and tell. Any questions or comments? Cool. All right, any other show and tell items before we move on? Okay. All right, topics. Go for it, Micah. Question on CI.
Yeah, just a quick question. So I'm doing like this. I've been doing some PRs that have like been for the Kubernetes resource model stuff. And one of the things I've encountered that's just been like a little bit like it's been a paper cut in development has been how CI. So GitHub Actions is great, right? Like I love like having containers to run stuff in, but I can't run all the GitHub tests. I mean, maybe I can. If I can, tell me how, but I'm not aware of that. And the problem with that is that I run make test, I run make verify, things look great locally, and then I push and I get failed builds. And that's really annoying. I'm like so if someone else was a new contributor and came along and like was like, oh yeah, I want to contribute to Tinkerbell, cool community, looks like a cool project, and I run the things that I'm supposed to run, but now I'm like how do I figure out what to do? How do I figure out how to install the things that run the tests that are failing? Like that's painful. So I've encountered this on this current PR I'm working on, but like on others as well. And so I kind of wondered like if folks here, I don't know how big a proposal to make this, but like I've opened small issues for this before about like specific pain points, but like do folks here agree? Do we want to see? I'll raise an issue kind of bigger about this, but like I feel like this is something that the project could get better at sort of standardizing. Whether that just means running make test, and that's the only thing that runs in Actions, that might be fine, or figuring out a way to run all the GitHub Actions locally. I just, when it's inconsistent, it's painful.
Go for it.
It's even worse than that. I think we're inconsistent across repos as well, right? So, yeah. And some of that has to do with how much attention has been paid to any given repo. So I just merged a fix in the Hagel repo because we had a test that was being run twice. And if you got unlucky, it's binding to a specific port. And if you get unlucky, it will fail to bind on the second run through when you're trying to run coverage. And the solution is to only run the tests once. But again, it's still not the same as the makefile. I think my sense is this is something that as we're touching code, it is reasonable to include in your PR, like any changes needed to make the tests that are being run in CI match closer whatever the makefile has in it. If people need help doing that, certainly filing an issue and saying like, I don't know how to do it in this particular repo, but this repo definitely has the problem of I can't figure out how to run all the tests that are run in CI locally is totally a legitimate issue that we should be working on and getting. But yeah, there's many different ways that tests are being written out in different repos, and it's I agree that it is painful.
Yeah, I just wonder if there should be if I'll raise it an issue for further discussion than just this call, but like it seems like for just general project health, like it'd be nice to have some sort of tenet somewhere that's like tests in CI should be reproducible locally easily, because if it's not, then it's painful. Yeah, and if that's our North Star, can we either get there or like make sure that we don't regress and make it worse?
I'd vote for a single make target that gets run in the GitHub action, as opposed to the other suggestion you had, Mike, of being able to run the GitHub actions locally. I would.
I don't even know if that's possible, but yeah, that's fine. That's totally fine with me. A single make target.
Yeah, it'll be There'll need to be some. Yeah, it feels like Nahum, you're saying there's gonna. We'll have to go repo by repo and figure out what that looks like, because I think some they're all over the place in terms of like CI checks and Nix shell and go test, and there's all kinds of stuff that is kind of all over the board.
Yeah, exactly.
I would.
Cool.
Yeah, I would say, like, maybe to echo what Nahum said, throw up the change that makes sense here, like a single make target, and then I think we'll come back around if since it's just documentation, come back around and be like, hey, when you to run tests, you have to have a single target or something, and your GitHub actions have to call that. You can't have separate things. You have to be the way you said it too, Micah. You have to have a test be reproducible locally.
Cool.
It seemed too, I think the Tink repo is kind of like our CNCF entry point too. We should probably be paying a little bit better attention, I think, in that repo, because that's kind of the landing page for most things. That one, that's unfortunate. Yeah, that Tink is like that.
One tricky thing is, for those of us for whom Nix is familiar and comfortable and easy, Nix makes it really great to make the make file. Like if you have the Nix environment and make is running within that Nix environment, and that is what we're using within the GitHub Actions, that is great for consistency. That is terrible for anyone for whom that Nix becomes too high a bar for entry. And one, I guess I don't have a clean answer to that, but certainly, obviously, in order to work in these repositories, you need at least a Golang tool chain, right? There are certain things you have to have that certainly Nix shell can provide. But I'm curious if people have thoughts on how do we make it easy for people to ensure that they have all the right tooling. And like, is Nix shell okay? Is that not okay? Is it, if we had a like Docker, I've toyed around with, if you had like a Docker container that has all the Nix shell and all the right stuff pre-baked somewhere that someone could pull down, then they could like Docker run the Tink dev environment, run tests, and be able to at least just throw it into a container and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, I had a same problem, like that exact problem on where didn't have Nix set up locally, and I can just run a Nix container one-off amount of volume and run the things, which is great, but it doesn't cache, right? Like the cache rebuilds every time because I'm doing a throwaway container. So I don't have a personal problem with Nix. That might be fine, but if we can find a way to not make it painful or super long install time, whether that means we have maintain a Nix image that has all our build tooling in a, in a public repo somewhere, or we
Tooling that
let
gives you a Docker volume locally that it will keep reusing to hold the next store or something like that.
or that yeah, exactly, that could work great too. Yeah, some cache like that. But be where I ideally as a contributor new contributor can run one command that should work, or when it works locally, it will work in CI.
I think one of the big concerns I have with Nix shell is the familiarity in the community, right? If we don't have a high familiarity within our community, I think then it becomes just a stumbling block for ourselves, for people coming in. I think there's good value, and it's taken me a while to get familiar enough with it. I wouldn't call myself an expert by any means, but I think I'm familiar enough with it that I can get around some of its quirks. But if the general community, I feel like if it's not familiar enough, I think we should maybe rethink what we're doing here and make the entry point more familiar. What you got now?
No, I'm thinking like we could also, so like there's like a few different options. A third option is not necessarily shipping a Docker container everywhere, but providing a make target that builds the environment locally and create and like tags it as an image locally, so that you run make the dev environment once it runs Docker, which builds that dev environment, and then that dev environment is available for running other things. Certainly, like, I think one of the tricky parts is I think we have developers across both Linux and Mac OS, and so that's like yet another layer of like, how do you ensure like getting the right Golang tooling, getting other random binaries that, like, if this particular repo wants to use JQ, and making it easy for people to get all those tools on whatever they're coming from. But again, I think to Micah's point, I guess in theory, if people can muddle around however they want on their local system and run the make target and have it succeed, then be confident, then that's great. If Nix is helpful, great. And if we can, I guess like the choices are like, you could even like sort of transform the Nix, the shell.nix into a list of, this is the software that this repository is using. You may want to go fetch it yourself, or here's a Docker file that will build you a container to do that sort of thing. And I wonder, I mean, it's given how big Lori and Derenv and Nix are, it's possible that there's an existing piece of software out there that's like, oh, okay, for the current working directory, like, oh, just build a Docker container based on shell.nix and label it and find it somewhere. I can look into that, but I give it like 50-50 shot.
Be interested to understand why we have so many dependencies, if that's from integration tests or if there's other reasons. And I don't know a lot still, so I'm just kind of, it's one of the first thoughts that's going through my head.
Some of them, it's not that many. And the main advantage of the Nix shell is just consistency across every developer. Is like, exactly that if you use Nix shell, you're getting the exact same tool chain that everyone else is using. Some of the repos do have bigger. I'm gonna go look and see like how bad some of our shell.nix files are.
Like for Tink core, which I've been working on, like the pain points have been like, there's just a bunch of different stuff to build different parts of it. Like if you want to generate like the Kubernetes CRDs, you need like some kube Go tooling, Go based tooling. You need, we run prettier on our YAML. So you need NPM. So, and we run like other linters that require other things installed. So it's just like we have all these like standards. It's great to have standards, but the way we install them is not, or at least we don't have a standard way of getting them all there.
Yeah, I would be interested in trying to look at those and figure out if there's alternative tools that maybe are come, they're Go based as well. And then we
Yeah.
just, because I mean, if we're stuck with Go, then we may as well just try to, dog food on that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is written in Go, so the more Go tooling you have, you're sort of consolidating your ecosystem. But yeah, totally agree.
I like the stuck with. That's nice, Stephen.
Well, I mean, it's what we're using as the main programming language. So may as well try to just find all the tools that we can in it. It just seems, it does worry me a little bit to hear like, oh yeah, we need JavaScript to do something. It's like, that like, okay, maybe we could do a little bit more research on that.
A quick look at the Tink repos shell.nix, and I think we could use just some cleanup, right? They've got Docker Compose in there, Vagrant. I don't think we need any of those. Anyways, just the point being that, yeah, we could probably just use a general cleanup of what's going on. There is also a bunch of this linting stuff hopefully can go away too, because if I'm not mistaken, we have a lint install repo now in the Tinkerbell org that abstracts a lot of that out and allows it to be kind of runtime enabled, right? So anyways, I think there could be a nice concerted effort here to go in and clean up a lot of what we have too. So
yeah, one of the other.
Go ahead, Micah.
Yeah, one of the other not exact. One of the other things that runs in CI that doesn't run locally is like code coverage. Like that, it's great. It's great to have code coverage. It's great to have increasing code coverage targets. But locally I can write tests and coverage, but I can't really see am I increasing coverage or not until I get to CI. So that's one more thing on the pile.
And then to add, just because you brought up code coverage, just understanding we're using CodeCov, I think, right? That open source, just understanding the way they do coverage is mind-boggling to me. So
yeah,
I don't know if I've been a part of anyone that's had that locally been able to run that. But yeah, I like that idea of either moving on to something that you can run locally or figuring out how to run that locally, something so that we can get that feedback quickly too.
right.
Yeah.
This is more of a kind of a tangential question. Has anyone ever seen a project that uses Go itself to build the project? Like they write a Go program to do the build stuff, like run the instead of make or a shell script, I guess, to orchestrate the build tasks.
Oh, to orchestrate build tests.
Yeah. So instead of your shell or your make stuff, you just have a Go program instead. It's something that's crossed my mind before, but I've never tried it, and I don't know if anyone's actually tried that pattern before. And I mean, again, if that's what we're using, it's pretty capable. So it's like, oh, why not use that? And maybe there's good reasons why not to.
Not that I've seen for running all the test targets and everything. I mean, Kubernetes has a gross amount of bash, but also has a bunch of Go specific Go tools specifically for developing Kubernetes. Bunch of code generation stuff that's specific to Kubernetes that there's just gobs of tools there. The closest thing I can think of is Go releaser maybe, but that's a generic one. But if you've never used it, you can configure all the Go bells and whistles in a YAML file and have Go releaser build your binary. But that's more build than CI. I don't know that it really does the CI thing.
It's more like not finding a tool or build workflow or whatever in a so it's kind of like the infrastructure as code versus software. So instead of writing it in a YAML or some kind of structured data format, instead you just write it in Go and just you run the program and it does your build stuff, is what I'm thinking.
The only one I've heard of, but I've never used this, called Mage. Put a link in the chat. I've only heard of it. I've never used it though. It's called Mage.
Not to be a shill, but AWS CDK kind of does that. You could probably like coerce it to do things like that. And it has Go support. Instead of making AWS resources, you could just make it run things.
Make it run what?
Make it run like
Nix.
you can make it run like CI or like, you know, other commands instead of doing a bunch of like AWS resource creation. But yeah, I haven't played enough to know for sure.
Yeah, that's a big lift too. I think just not that it's not needed, but I think that's another consideration. Is there's a big lift to move to anything else, right? So and we've got a lot of repos and we've got a lot of stuff going on. I don't think anybody that put any work in would get you know, thrown out of the community by any means. But I think it's just there's a lot that seems like it could be a big lift, but until somebody actually starts down the road, I guess we don't quite know, but that's something to take into account. Clean up versus, you know, wholesale new thing, you know.
I'll create an issue for this just to kind of track like this discussion and kind of also sort of, I guess, propose like, here's where we want to be for all our repos. I mean, Jacob or anyone else, feel free to tell me, should this be, this is not just a single repo issue too. Like this is kind of cross-cutting. Is this better suited as a proposal or do you want just an initial issue to kind of track the discussion?
Personally, I think we need to redo our proposals idea here, but so I would suggest an issue unless somebody else has opinions otherwise.
I think an issue sounds good.
Yeah, we'll start an issue then.
So I think we talked about it in triage party last week. So what we did, if I'm not mistaken, we cleaned up a bunch of org projects and we talked about a little bit like we need to make better use of these projects and milestones. And I think this might be a good opportunity right here to use an issue like this to create some kind of milestone or project around this kind of cleanup effort. So you could track cross repo, you could, you know, we could have you know, some concerted effort to say, you know, let's, you know, get a lot of help in terms of this one project or this one milestone. I think this could be a nice use case to push that idea forward. I'll take an action on myself to look at how that works in terms of what we need to do or what it would take or whatever. And I'll post in the Slack channel any updates I find there.
Just loop somebody back in from the Slack channel who asked if the meeting is in an hour. No, the meeting is now.
Oops.
That's a good
Awesome.
reminder to maybe pre-flight these meetings in the CNCF Slack channel. There used to be a notifier for the Equinix Slack channel that would say, hey, community meeting, and alert folks there. You don't have to hear, but if you're in the channel expecting there to be a heads up.
Yeah, that's very fair. And it looks like Steve Wills, he's been very active lately. It looks like doing a bunch of stuff. So that's a bummer that we missed him if he doesn't make it today. Be interested to, I feel like he would have some cool show and tells if I'm not mistaken. See him.
I have to drop for another call. Thanks, folks.
Bye.
So yeah, Jeremy, you put that topic there. Is that just like a permissions based thing in the Slack to put that kind of notification? Do you know off the top of your head, or is that going to require us to get approval?
I'm not sure if there's botting, but the very simplest is just taking, and when we start the meeting, much like we write our names in the sheet, also have a checklist item that says alert the alert the Slack room. And so a lightweight version of it, if you only have to fire it off once every 2 weeks, it's not to swim the bureaucracy, but just send the message.
I like that. I'm putting it right now. So it's going in the templates, notify Slack channel. I like it. Thanks. Ah, perfect. Even better. The link. Thank you. Sweet. All right. Any other topics anybody wants to bring up? I scanned the discussions label in Trash Party. Didn't see anything for today. Nobody has any other topics or discussion items. We could be done here. All right, going once, going twice. So awesome. Well, have a great, if you're able to have a break, have a great break. Just a reminder, no triage party next week. We'll see you all in community meeting in 2 weeks. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Jacob.
Here.
Yeah.